Hey everybody, this is a math review video. So we're going to be looking at rounding/estimating, and we're also going to review subtraction. But this time we're going to do subtraction with decimals. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do whenever rounding is I need to decide, am I rounding to the nearest 10 or the nearest 100? We know how to do both. So we're going to do both for every number that I give. Okay, so you have the number 156. Let's round it to the nearest 10 first. Okay, so first I need to underline my tens place. Remember, we're in ones, tens, hundreds. I'm going to underline my number in the tens, draw an arrow to my number in the ones. Now, my number in the ones tell me whether I have to stay where I'm at or I get to bump on up. 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, raise the score. So we're looking at the number 6 right here, number 6. Is that 4 or less, let it rest, or 5 or more, raise the score? You are right. It is 5 or more, raise the score. So we're going to raise our score to 160. So if we're rounding to the nearest 10, it would round to 156 would round to 160. So you would write it like this, 156, and your rounding sign's like a squiggled equal sign. Rounds to 160. All right, now let's round it to the nearest 100. Okay, in order to do that, I need to underline my number in the 100 spot. So ones, tens, hundreds, that's my 1. Now I'm going to draw an arrow to the number in the tens because the number to the right gets to decide whether we get to stay where we're at or bump on up. 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, raise the score. So we have the number 5. That is 5 or more, so we're going to raise our score. So our 5 would bump this up to a 2. So our 1 would become a 2. So if we're rounding the nearest 100, it rounds to 200. I know this because it's 56 away from 100 and it's 44 away from 200. So we would write this as 156 rounds to 200. It's closer to 200 than it is 300. And 156 is closer to 60 than it is 150. All right, another example, 726. Let's round it to the nearest 10. Okay, so in order to round this to the nearest 10, I need to underline the number in the 10 spot, draw an arrow to the number in the ones because it's directly to the right. I have 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, raise the score. And it's a number 6. So we know that it needs to raise its score. So 726 rounded to the nearest 10 would round to 730 because it's directly in between 720 and 730. And it's closer to 730. All right, now we're going to round it to the nearest 100. Okay, so 726 is directly in between 700 and 800. We have to decide, what is it closer to? Is 726 closer to 700 or is it closer to 800? Well, let's underline our number in the 100 spot. Our number in the 100 spot is the 7. Remember, we draw an arrow just to the number to the right of it. The 1 spot does not matter. All that matters is this 2 right here. So 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, raise the score. 2 is less than 4, so we need to let it rest. So 726 gets to rest at 700. So I'd write 726 rounded to the nearest 100 would be 700 because it's only 26 away from 700 and it's 74 away from 800. One more example. Let's round to the nearest 10, 483. In order to round to the nearest 10, what's the first thing I need to do? You're right, I need to find the number in the 10 spot. So I underline the 8 because it's in the tens, draw an arrow to the number in the ones. 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, raise the score. 3 is less than 4, so we need to let it rest. Very good. So 483 rounded to the nearest 10 would be 480. I know that 483 is directly between 480 and 490. It is a 3 away from 483 and it's 7 away from 490. So I know I need to let it rest at 480. All right, now let's round it to the nearest 100. First, I need to identify my number that's in the 100 spot. So let me erase this. Okay, my number in the 100 spot is the 4. Underline the 4. Looks like I'm on the highlighter, but that's okay. Underline the 4, draw an arrow to the 8. The 3 doesn't matter. All that matters is the number that the arrow is pointing to. The arrow is pointing to the 8. 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, raise the score. 8 is more than 5, so I need to raise the score. So this becomes 483 rounds to the nearest 100 of 500. 483 is between 400 and 500. So I had to decide, is it closer to 400 or is it closer to 500? And it was. It's only 17 away from 500, and it's 83 away from 400. So I know that 483 rounds to 500 to the nearest 100, and it rounds to 480 to the nearest 10. Now, some of our questions that I saw on Star when walking around said, estimate 19 minus 5. The word estimate is the same thing as round. So you have the number 19. What number is close to 19 that's really easy to work with? Numbers that are easy to work with, I think, are multiples of 5 and 10. So what would this round to? 20. Good. 19 is really close to 20. And in our heads, it's easy to do 20 minus 5, and we know that gets us 15. So even though it didn't have 14 as an answer, because it said estimate, it had 15 as an answer. And 15 would have been the correct answer because 19 rounds to 20. Another example that I saw that was similar to that, it said estimate 299 times 2. Even though this week we kind of learned how to do this, it doesn't give the exact right answer. So it's important that we know that that word estimate means the same as round. What would 299 round to? What's it super close to? 300. Very good. So we just pretend it's 300 because it's close enough. So we have 300 times 2. Well, I know that 300 plus 300, so I have 2 groups of 300, gets me 600. So if I were to estimate 299 multiplied by 2, I know that it should get me 600. So your correct answer would be 600. Even though it doesn't give you 598 as an answer, it's still going to get you 600. 600 would be your correct answer because it's asking you to estimate. So it wants you to work with numbers that are easy to work with. Rounding, all rounding and estimating is working with numbers that are easy to work with. They're working in multiples of 10. All right, now we're going to move on to something that I saw that we absolutely know how to do, and that is subtraction with 3-digit numbers. But what I saw was it incorporated a decimal, and that threw some of you guys off. You panicked because we haven't incorporated decimals. Well, it's no reason to panic. Let me show you what you're supposed to do. If you see a decimal in there, all you have to do is put the decimal down here. So you drop your decimal and you subtract it just like you would if there wasn't a decimal there. 6 minus 8. Got more on the floor. I got to go next door. My 5 would become a 4. My 6 would become a 16. I took 10 away from here. I add 10 here. 16 minus 8 is 8. 4 minus 1 is 3. Got more on top. No need to stop. Then I have 4 minus 2. Got more on top. No need to stop. 4 minus 2 is 2. And there you go, 23.8. You can even double check your answer by adding 23.8 plus 21.8. 8 plus 8 is 16. Remember, I got to drop my decimal, carry my 1. 3 plus 1 gets me 5. 2 plus 2 gets me 4. So it all checks out. So with the decimal, you just leave it where it's at. You just drop it down directly below where it's at. Let's do one more example using a decimal with subtraction. So I have 532.6 minus 347.4. 6 minus 4 got more on top. No need to stop. 6 minus 4 is 2. I drop my decimal. I put my 2 there. What I mean by drop my decimal is I put it directly below where the decimals are. Now I've got 2 minus 7. 2 take away 7 is impossible. I got more on the floor. I got to go next door. My 3 becomes a 2. I took 10 away from here. I add 10 here. Now my 2 becomes a 12. 12 minus 7 is 5. 2 minus 4 is impossible. I've got more on the floor. I got to go next door. My 5 becomes a 4. My 2 becomes a 12. 12 minus 4 is 8. 4 minus 3 is 1. So I get 185.2 as my difference. Let's go ahead and check it just to be sure. I can check by adding 347. Line my decimals up. That's always really important. 2 plus 4 is 6. 5 plus 7 is 12. 8 plus 4 is 12, plus 1 more is 13. 3 plus 1 gets me 5. When I get the same answer here, I know that my difference was correct. All right, I hope that helped you guys out a little bit. It's something that we have learned before, but just with a little bit of a twist. Have a great Wednesday, everybody.